Welcome, Dr. Smith.
Thank you.
Honorable Vice Chancellor Eknath Sharma, Registrar Kamal Akal, Dean of Management Law, Silu Acharya Manandar, Rajan Sir, Purnachandra Sir, Eknath Sir, and participants, and of course Muhammad Smith, retired professor from Germany, double PhD in linguistics as well as in theology. He has been working for a long time in IFTS school as a program manager in Germany. He is here to make a presentation on distance, online learning and a mechanism of memory. In this presentation, and you are welcome. I would like to request him to make his presentation now. Dr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. I'm happy to be here and to have the opportunity to give you a lecture on a topic. So first, before I start with the lecture, I'd like to distribute the handout. And I'll give you some, please. Yeah, I'll give you some more. There's some more people coming in. So what I'll do is my plan, and I'm used to following a plan very closely and strictly. Germans, there's a special type of German mentality to follow plans strictly. So what I'll do is I'll have a lecture that will be, I hope, not longer than 45 minutes. So because I want to limit the time of the lecture. I don't want to give a long speech. Just want to tell you some important details about distance education. After the 45 minutes, there will be time for questions, discussion. You can ask whatever you like or say whatever you like, and I'll try to give a reply. I have divided my lecture into 4 parts. And in academics, that means in lectures and in written papers, everything starts with an introduction to the topic. Now, the handout fairly, more or less, contains all the points that I'll cover in today's lecture. So the topic of my lecture is far distance education as a special form of adult education. It's mostly adults that Open University will deal with as students. So that means people 20 years old and older. Yeah, that means students above the age of 20. Could even theoretically could even reach up to students up to 63. In Germany, we have students who decide to enroll for studies at 75, for example, when they retire, because they have so much free time, nothing to do. They want to do something useful, and they think, oh, maybe I go back to university and do some studies in some subject that I'm interested in. So theoretically, any age from the age above 20. Adult education differs in some essential points from children education. So that means the way of teaching at school, at elementary school, essentially is different from the way you teach adults. That's in general. Then, within adult education, you have for university level courses, again, that's a special thing. The reason why this difference exists is because of the brain, the way your brain is structured. The brain structure of a child is different from that of an adult. I'll tell you later a bit more about this. So, and all what you do is all learning, all teaching is processed via the brain in your head. So that means, first of all, it's very important to teach. For a teacher, it's very important to teach in a way that is not directed against the functionality of your brain. That means all kinds of teaching, all kind of methodology of teaching must conform in a way how your brain works. If you're using a methodology that's working against the way of the brain, then the teaching and even the learning will not be, or most likely is not to be successful. That's some simple truth at the beginning. And the reason why children teaching and children learning is different from that of adults is because a child, or let's say a younger child, a pupil at the age of 6 to 10 years of age, has a different kind of brain structure different from that of an adult. In the brain you have nerve cells, you all know, and these nerve cells are connected by so-called synapses. These are contact points between the different nerve cells in your brain, and the connections between these synapses, they are changing over the time. That means as a child there are almost no connections or different connections between these synapses of the nerve cells in the brain that are different from an adult. So the older a human being or a child becomes, the more there is a change in the structure of the nerve cells and the connections between the nerve cells and the synapses. And that's one of the reasons, first of all, one of the reasons why each human being is different. That means is an individual, is unique. And the other point is that also the way of learning done via the brain is done differently at adult age because of the different synaptic structure among the nerve cells in the brain. That's simply truth. So we're talking, and that means for far distance education we talk about the way adults learn, taking into account the kind of synapses and brain structure that the brains of adults have. Then far distance education is something special, because in adult education you can have courses where students are physically present in class, like you here. I can give you a lecture about, let's say, linguistics or history of English literature or whatever. So you can take your notes, and I'll do this each week. And at the end of the semester, I give you a written exam. So that's the traditional way of teaching adult classes, like in a way like school children or like students at university. Students at university at the age of, let's say, 20 to 24, something like that, are young adults. They are adults. By far distance study, it's different. There is no teacher in class. The student is studying by himself. what I want to make clear is, first of all, far distance study, as Open University will do it, is primarily adult education. That's number one, point number one to note. The second thing is that it's done by far distance study, which is again a special form of adult education. Yeah. I mean, adult education, far distance studies versus the traditional way of adult education, let's say, with students physically present in class. So these are the two initial points I'd like you to know. So, I can give you one example of a person in history, and you probably know the name, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is a former US American president. By his studies and by his degrees, he was a lawyer. And Abraham Lincoln taught himself law, then took the exam somewhere to become a qualified lawyer. That means he studied by himself. Also, he was a student. Maybe not by far distance, because at that time in 1860, something like that, there were no far distance courses in the United States. But he taught himself. That means he just bought the books, read them, and then tried to pass the exam. So he was teaching himself, and you call that, there's a special technical term for it. It's called autodidactic. Is it big enough? Can you see it all? The word? Autodidactic. Now, auto means self. That's from Greek. So that's a word from Greek. It means self, and didactic means it's also from Greek, ancient Greek. So that means in Europe we have ancient Greek and Latin are classical languages for us, like, for example, Sanskrit is for you. Because also Nepali derives from Sanskrit. Okay, and didactic means teacher or teaching. So self-teaching. So what Abraham Lincoln did, he taught all the stuff by himself. He just got some textbooks, studied the textbooks, and then somewhere tried to pass the exam to become a lawyer, a qualified lawyer. So this is one. Abraham Lincoln is a very prominent example of someone who rose from very humble social background. His family, as far as I know, was very poor, and he actually came up the social ladder from the bottom of society up to a lawyer, meaning in the West, meaning something like middle class, and anyway, it's high above low class, and then finally president, upper class. So that's what we call social mobility. Now, social mobility means you can improve your own social status, including the status of your income, by education. If you get more education or better education, you are more qualified. In consequence, if you are more qualified, you can look for a better pay, for a job that is paid much better than before. So you will have a higher income. With a higher income, you also have much more possibilities. You can look for an apartment that is nicer, or which is perhaps also a bit more expensive. You can live in a nice area. You don't have to live in the poor area anymore, where the cheap apartments are, and so on. You can have a big car instead of a small car. So that means you have every chance in the West. I'm talking about the reality in the West. You have every chance to move upwards by improving your education, by getting a better job, a higher paid job, so you have a higher standard of living, and this is what we call social mobility. And Abraham Lincoln is an example, a historical example of this. Okay, then now, after this general outlook, I'd like to get to Fartis's education. And Mr. Dima, who's here, is my graduate student and is doing a PhD. He's doing a PhD thesis under my supervision. And he'll talk something later. He's been at my school offering PhD in linguistics and English teacher training. And it would be, later he will tell you something about the way we are doing it. So that means I'm coming to the point that there are basically two ways of doing far distance education. What we do at our school, we simply provide the students with student material, written student material, with three kinds of files. One is a so-called syllabus file. That syllabus file contains everything that is needed to know about the course. What is the aim of the course? What is the objective? What will the student know? What will be the competences the student will acquire in that course? Then the student will be given some advice on study techniques to study a textbook. For example, if you have a textbook and you have, let's say, 5 or 6 pages to read in the textbook, you have to pick out, by reading the text, you have to pick out the most essential information, underline the information, so to get it in your brain. There's no teacher to tell you, there's only the textbook that you have. This is an example of study technique. So this all will be explained in the syllabus file. Then the last point in the syllabus file to be covered would be information about the exam. What is the exam policy? What is the grading policy? Right. So that's all contained in the syllabus file. So after the student is asked to read the syllabus file before he begins with actual textbook study of the course. What we have is prescribed textbook studies or set textbook for each course. This may vary between 1 or 2 or 3, maximum 3 textbooks for one course, single course. So after the student read the syllabus file, it's normally a file of, let's say, 3 pages, not more. The student can start with textbook study. Let's say you have a textbook of 600 pages, something like that sometimes, right? Quite a big one. Then what we do, we tell the students, when you feel ready for the exam, that means upon completion of textbook study, when you feel ready for the exam, write to us and request an exam file. So I'll send out, or our office will send out an exam file to the student. The student has to complete that exam, let's say within a given time, and return it punctually in time to our office where it will be graded. So that's what we do. That means we don't write our own textbooks, because writing your own textbooks will take a lot of time to complete. It will take many efforts on your part, yeah, and that means it will take a long time until you have the first courses in place. That means, for example, I heard that Open University wants to start a program in next month. Well, if you have something already in place, like something textbooks developed for Open University, that's fine. If you don't have, now, it might be a problem. What we do is, we don't write our own textbooks. What I do, I look for textbooks that I find suitable for a certain course that are generally available in the bookstores, as e-books, online, somewhere. I look at the textbook and see, oh, it's good for the student. This is good for self-study. Things like that. Then, if I decide to take the textbook, I take this textbook as a required reading for the course. And I integrate the contents of this textbook into the syllabus file, and then I will, of course, so that means I really can create a lot of courses within a relatively short time by making use of textbooks that already exist. All I have to do is, to create a course is to write a syllabus file, and then another thing to write the exam file. And I can do that within 4 weeks for one course. If you want to write your own textbook, it will take 1 year for one course. How many courses do you need to have to let's say, for a degree program, for a bachelor? How many courses do you need to have? Just in a simple, let's say, in a single area, let's say, in law, if you have faculty of law, if you have a faculty of social science, how long does it take? You must have, let's say, maybe 30 courses for one degree program. Yeah, then you have to write 30 textbooks. Takes around. You'll do easier if you refer to textbooks that exist already. So that's what we are doing. So that means we have been able to create courses and degree programs within a relatively short time. I know that Open University, the difference to Open Universities in India and also in the UK, as far as I know, is different. They create their own textbooks, so it takes them a longer time to complete all this. So now it depends. You can choose either way that is suitable for you. I'm just telling you the differences. Even in far distance education, there are different ways to create textbook. That's why I'm telling you how we are doing it. Maybe it's not the suitable approach for your institution, but it's suitable for us. So well, it's for you to decide which option you take. So that's what I'm trying to make clear. Okay. So I finished the introduction, and okay. Now I tell you some, well, each lecture also must contain a little bit of theory. So I will try to make it very short and not too boring, because I know theory can be boring. So I'll tell you a little bit about adult education in Western countries, in our country, in Germany, for example. So we have in Germany, we have, of course, different programs of adult education. We have programs of adult education above and below university level. And in adult education now in our country, we have a general a theory which is called constructivism. So I don't know whether you ever heard about this term. It's a technical term. It's a special, let's say, educational theory aimed at adult education. I don't want to. We don't have the time that I can tell you what it is. I just mention it. So, and I ask you, if you want to know what it is, you can find the information in the internet. If I don't tell you now in depth what this theory is about, I'm activating you as students. Imagine you were students. Then I'm telling the student, okay, This is a term. There's information available in the internet. You can look it up in the internet. So go to the English Wikipedia, enter the keyword constructivism, and you'll find lots of information there. So I don't have to tell you that. So I can save time, and I'm also activating the student to do something himself. The student is not only sitting there and takes notes or listens to my speech, but the students will do something himself. So that's a good way, we think in the West, between student and teacher interaction. I personally think that constructivism, let me just tell you this, constructivism is a pedagogical theory that is against style of lecture, the kind of lecture I'm giving now. And I believe that this theory does not work for university level education, because the theory presumes that you do everything by students talking to each other or by games or something like that, and you cannot do this at the level of university education, because students learning by talking to each other. Well, the student next to me does not know more than I do as a student, right? So what can I learn from him? What can he learn from me? So I think this theory is not suitable for university level education, in adult education. It may be well in other areas, but not at this. So that's my personal reflection on this. Okay, then we have in the learning process we have the learner. And it's nowadays it is believed by many specialists in educational science that all teaching, or good teaching today, should be student-centered or learner-centered. Difficult word, okay, I'll put it on the blackboard. That means everything the teacher does should be with the student in mind, to help the student. The student, that means for anything what the teacher does, the student is the most important person. And the teacher should always seek to serve the student and to help him study well and succeed. That's the idea behind this a term of student-centered. Traditional teaching, also I think in Nepal, was teacher-centered. So the teacher stood in class, as I do now, and told something to the students. So the teacher speaking most of the time. The students were quiet, and perhaps the teacher asked them, okay, repeat this word, or repeat this word, for example, in a class of English language class, something like that. But the idea or ideal situation is that students are active and speak most of the time, while the teacher is silent most of the time. Well, it does not really work at, let's say, at university education, but I'm just introducing educational theory as it is. I can't change it. It is like that. I have my criticism of it as well. Now, yeah, and the learner, that means if you're thinking, if your approach in teaching is student-centered, you will see the learner as an achiever. Well, different students perform differently. Some students perform better than others. But everything you do is trying to help the learner, the student, to succeed. And of course, we know from learning psychology, there are different types of learners. Put some in here. Well, I've listed some of the learner types. I've listed here on the handout. That's, you'll find it under point 2, 2.3 on your handout. So I don't have to repeat all that, but just will give you some examples. For example, you have the visual. Visual means see. Some people use their eyes to learn, or primarily use their eyes to learn. Other people primarily use their ears to learn by listening. You call this the audio learner. So there are different types of learners, and for details about the kind of learner, I want to refer you to another source that already I have given to Open University last week, or when we were here the first time. It's a course called The Learner as an Achiever, as a part of the English teacher training program that I've created. Has honored this. So if you want to know more details about this topic, different types of learners, I would like you to refer you to look up that course file in the PDF on a disk, which I've given to the dean. You can. So I won't talk much more about it. I just want to point your attention to the fact that you have to take care of such different learner types. Okay, and a last theoretical point is learning the brain and memory. Now, the learning process, I've already said, and you probably also know, so it's nothing new to you. Learning is done processed by the brain. So how does your brain work? I've told something before about the brain structure, the nerve cells and the synapses connecting the different nerve cells, and anytime you learn something, you have a biochemical process in your brain which conducts a kind of electric stimulus from one brain cell or from one synapse to the synapse of another brain cell. Now, we know if you have learned something successfully, you will remember it. That means the kind of information you have learned will end up in your long-term memory. And anytime you need this information, you can call it from your long-term memory and act accordingly to this information. For example, in my country, we have a lot of traffic, but we have traffic lights. Big cities, all big cities have traffic lights, and their signal, if the signal of the traffic light is green, it means that the people walking by feet can cross the road. If the traffic sign is red, it means passengers, people walking by feet, must stop, and because the cars are passing by. So that means if I've learned that with the green light, I can cross the road. I call this information from my long-term memory and cross the road. Simple as that. The same holds true for any other information or things you have learned that are kept in your long-term memory. Now, some things are learned better than other things. Some things are forgotten, right? But we all have experienced that already. But now the question is, what is the best way to get information that you learn into the long-term memory of your brain? So, and educational psychologists have found out by different kinds of experiments that the best way is if the new information you study connects with some old information already stored in the long-term memory. So that means there must be some kind of associative principle. I'll give you an example. Well, I know a lot about a lot about languages. I don't know so much about other things. So I'll give you an example from language lesson. For example, imagine I have an English class and I'm teaching English as a simple English teacher, let's say at the high school. And I want to teach the students some new words. So, for example, simple thing, this is a table, right? Then this, a chair, and so on. All these, table and chair, are single items the student must store as new information in his long-term memory. The best way to store this kind of information, these are two items, to store in a long-term memory is that you connect, that you create a so-called semantic network. And the semantic network in this case would be table, chair, blackboard. Anything you can find in a classroom, right? So, and the semantic, the network or the connecting point in all these things, table, chair, blackboard, is the classroom. If you just imagine what a classroom is like, looks like, and this is the connecting point, and you get a table, chair, blackboard. You can much more easily remember than if you just try to learn that separately by heart. So for example, that's one of the techniques to make use of to learn things successfully and store in your long-term memory. Okay, that's so far the theory. Now I'd like to come to a third part, which will be relatively short, I hope. When we, as a part of this institution, when we want to create course programs and degree programs, degree programs degree programs consist of different courses. Let's say we have a bachelor program with including 13 courses the students have to take until they achieve, let's say, the minimum of credits, semester hour credits to graduate, and that's 120 credits in our system, the Anglo-American system. As a part of this institution, what do you have to have in mind? What do you have to think out before you create such courses and programs, syllabi, textbook, and so on? So the first thing is, you're creating a course. Well, you should know why are you creating a course with this topic. For example, you could create a course about the history of Kathmandu in the 16th century, something like that. So, it's an interesting topic. But well, you have to ask, what is it good for? Why should the student study such a course? What can he do with it to improve his education, and what can he do with it in practice? For example, when the student, and most of the students at Open University will be like that, they are looking for better jobs, getting getting a bit more payment and all such things. These will be the kind of students you'll have. So you should think, do you think that, let's say, a student who takes a course in the history of 16th century Kathmandu will be relevant for his situation in life today, so he can find a better job? What can he do with a course on 16th century history of Kathmandu? Well, I think, well, I may be wrong, but I think he cannot do very much with it. So you have to determine what is the student looking for. All the students you have are ambitious people. they want to improve their education, and also by improving their education, they also hope, implicitly or explicitly hope, that they can get a better position and thereby a better income. Right? So you have to see, before creating a course, you should determine what is needed, or what are the students looking for. You can find out by, let's say, making a survey, putting up something in the internet, a questionnaire, and interested students can tick any kind of subjects they would like to have. Then you ask for the reason and things like that. So that's the first thing Open University has to do in deciding what kind of programs you will create. You can theoretically you can create any kind of program. A program from Chinese, to law. Anything you can even create a program, say a program language course in Swahili. It's an African language. But what will you do with Swahili as a Nepali student in this country? What will you do? It may be interesting to study Swahili, but it will not bring you any better position. It will not bring you any education that you require for a better position here in Nepal and to gain more income. So this is one of the points. Then, of course, you need to determine. You need to have your potential students in mind. So you must have an imagination of what your students will be, what will be their age, what previous education they will have. So you can create a course that exactly tailors the students' need. And this is what, again, I told you about student-centered or learner-centered learning and study. So that as, let's say, as teachers of Open University, you have to think about the possible, most likely profile of your students, so you can create a course that is best tailored to the needs of the students. Well, then, of course, you have to decide what kind of textbook, what kind of teaching material you will use. And last but not least, you can decide about the social form. The social form is something we have in our country. And you always are covered in a lesson plan. For example, the social form of a student activity. You can, for example, if you have a textbook, you can complement the textbook study with some student activities, and they can have different social forms. For example, that can be work in pairs, or it can be group work, or that could be individual work where the students works alone. So imagine as a Open University, if you have, let's say, students, several students in one city, let's say in Biratnagar. Well, you have, let's say, Open University has 10 students. So these students would be a good idea if you could ask these students to meet, to have regular meetings from time to time, so they can discuss and study their together, discuss their work together, which helps the learning process quite a lot. So, and you could do that for every student, and let's say in a certain area. If you have students, let's say in the northern part of the country, you could advise them to build such student groups there, and for such student groups you can have such complementary student activities that can cover these kind of different social forms. Okay, now I've spoken thus far. Now, okay, This is Mr. Dimal. He's my graduate student in English text. And he's been studying in our school, and now the time has come that Mr. Dimal will tell you, from his point as a student, how our system works and how was the details of it. I think it would be good for you to know. Okay, please go ahead.
Myself? Okay. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Smith. I enrolled in the school IFT more 3.5, I think. It has been more than 3 years enrolled in the school. I would like to share my experiences. I am the students of English and sociology. Especially, I did my sociology from TU, MA education from IGNU, then RD also I did MA. Then I was teaching in college, Berlin Multiple College Traveling, and Antipolis College as well. I taught more than 15 years in school, being as vice principal in school. I was looking for my further education. Meanwhile, Dr. Vista, means Krishna Vista, and I we taught in same school, Arunima Higher Secondary School. There is, when we taught there, we were very good friends. Then meanwhile, when he became gold medalist in MA English, he missed some years. I didn't know where he went. I didn't know where he go. Then later, maybe I think 10 years, 11, 12 years back, he saw my profile in LinkedIn.com. Krishna Vishnu. Yeah. Then he sent me email. What are you doing, Mr. Dimal? Yes, I'm same job, same occupation. What we used to do before. I did same. I'm doing same. I replied. Then he linked Dr. Vista link with Professor Smith. Me. Then I submitted everything and I enrolled. After enrolling, let me share the experiences, how I went through and how I progressed myself. First of all, after enrolling, as my professor he already mentioned I went through the syllabus. Then turn by turn. He didn't used to send many books in one time. Suppose I learned only 100 full marks linguistics, no more than 100 full marks. Firstly he sent me phonology chapter, 2-3 textbooks, then so many, yes, I think 3-4 books, more than 200, some 300, some various like this. I enjoyed book. In that time we had load setting, big problem, load setting. Because of load setting, though I used to download the file, it was very difficult to read because of load setting. Then I print it out. I used to print out all the material. Even now I have made heap of many printout in my room. I think 80,000 to 1 lakh above I printed. I spent in this printing. Okay, then when I used to finish up all the course, my professors sent highlighting with highlighter, yes, critical, yes, being as a student, I left everything, even teaching I left, everywhere job I left. Now I'm full-timer student since 3 years back, more than 3 years back. As a student, I'm full-timer from that time and onward. Still I'm working, now I'm on my thesis dissertation work. Before dissertation, he used to train me. He used to send me some books, PDF in PDF. Then I used to read out. Then when I used to finish, okay, I have finished my reading. Then he used to send me question, work, assignment, or exam file. Then he used to give me duration. Within this duration, you have to complete this one. Yes. My professor is very strict in time schedule, because he used to hear the time very punctually. He used to hear the time. Suppose phonology, I say the next one, like morphology, I saying the text. Similarly, morphology I finish. Then again, syntax, like the syntax chapter. Then again, suppose I finish my syntax assignment and everything. Then again, one time I used to visit TU Linguistic Center of Linguistic Department frequently, because I was very new in this linguistic criteria. I studied only 100 full marks in my MA linguistics, but I had less knowledge about linguistics in broad. Then I used to go there in central department, visit with Dr. Redmi, head of department. Then Karnakar Khatiwara, he did PhD in Nepal. I used to visit him frequently. Then many lecturer in university, I used to visit them, used to discuss about such material.
Karnakar did in Nepali, right?
No, English.
He's
Yeah, Nepal community. Then, yes, what I didn't used to get clear concept, I used to visit there. Then sometime I used to send the email to my professor. This is the things I'm getting a little bit problem. Please, yes. He immediately he used to reply. This is the best mentorship, let's say, tutoring style. I complete totally different than here and my professor, because immediately, suppose if I send my some assignment today, immediately by evening or by tomorrow, he used to send me feedback. This is your good. This here is you have to correct, or this language you have to again rethink, like this. He used to give me feedback immediately. That feedback used to encourage me, because though I was already aware how to complete my course, but his feedback, his continuous support made me very easy to cope up with my courses and material and assignment and exam system, everything. Especially one morphosyntax he had sent me. I was unknown what is morphosyntax. And I went to linguistic department and asked Dr. Karnakar, because he did his PhD on morphosyntax of Hima. Then I discussed and I got lots of material concept from him. Yes, what I used to do, suppose if he used to send 3 textbooks, I used to download maybe for one textbook, I used to download 4-5 textbooks from internet again, because for related similar context, I used to compare from another textbook. Especially my professor, he sent me many textbooks from SEAL International product. Books produced from SEAL International. From there he sent me many. Among many textbooks, I love some which really encourage me, inspire me in this research work. One sociology manual textbook from this SEAL International, another cultural anthropology guide one linguistic research guide. Those, I think, no less than 600, one book. Yeah, pages. No less than 600 pages.
Mr. Dima,
Yeah.
could you say some final words? Well, I have a question. Could you tell the audience, did the system we have at IFTS, did it work for you, or was it so bad, all so bad, that you would never do it again?
Ah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, interesting what already I told you. Here I share my experience. The best one is mentorship or tutorial skill. For this open learning or distant learning, we don't have to delay, I think, because he used to send me feedback that used to encourage me. Yes, correct. That used to guide me again and again to go ahead. That is the thing. Yes, I think my experience best, even minor, let's say, article problem. In Nepali, we sometimes Nepali. Though I learned, I did my already English sociology, but even though I was weak in English, like even article, sometimes A and the in writing time used to be mistake. He used to give such correction, even such article, minor things also. I think minor things, even this open and distant learning tutor or faculty member has to suggest or they have to give minorly suggestion to students. That counts a lot for students. Yes, to go ahead. This is the best I achieved from you. Yes, even if I will be teacher, I will follow your procedures. That's great. Yeah, that is. Then sometimes we used to talk in Skype. I talked with my professor in Skype. When he used to give me the time, you come at 9 o'clock in internet. Yes, he used to be, though he is very aged man, but he used to be in time. Yes, 9 means 9 o'clock, like here today. 1 o'clock. Yeah, he came 1 o'clock already. Yeah, similar. Yes, that is time.
Not aged in spirit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Spirit is young.
But Mr. Dima, you're talking about the German way of doing things.
Yeah. That's.
Okay.
I was inspired from him. That is time punctual time care. That is that counts a lot. One. Sometimes yes. Sometimes suppose when I used to get some problem about doing assignment, sometimes maybe this far distant learning, all students may not be very intelligent. Yes, though I used to go to you or sometime here, sometime discussion, and I used to collect different reference book from different places. Sometimes TU library, sometimes TU bookshop, sometimes from professor, sometimes books sent, PDF sent by my professor. I used to collect all, and even now in my laptop, if I remember now, if I imagine how I did for one question, maybe 20 books I went through for one question. Yes. Yes. Yeah, okay. Then sometimes only one problem what I used to get is because tutor or professor, if he was in Nepal, I immediately would have gone to meet him. Because he is in Germany, he lives in Germany. Sometimes even in Skype, it's not all the time easy to meet. All the time, whenever I used to get problem, I used to email him. this is my problem, this is the problem I'm facing, and then he used to give me feedback. Then these are the way he really care me. Though he was living in Germany, but even in Skype and email and telephone made us very close. This is what he did. I think I work for more than 1.5 hours for assignment, right?
Yeah.
Assignment, reading, writing,
His assignments, his written assignments, he sometimes sent me, had more than 80 pages.
Reflection, yeah.
Yeah,
because,
average.
Why that happened means sometimes, though I was teacher, sometimes suppose TESOL question related to me. I used to reflect different psychological, classroom to everything related to Nepal, so assignment used to be longer. Yeah, yes sir? That, next, when this topics of dissertation was fixed, I'm working now exploring the relationship between language and culture in the Nepal community, socio-linguistic. He made me work not only one topics, I think. Morphology also I did, syntax also I did, phonology also I did, anthropology also I did, sociology also I did, doing these many different areas. Only then I came in my topics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then I
Mr.
came in my
Dimal,
topics.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'd like to finish the lecture now.
Okay.
Thank you for your report.
Then yes, then after this fixing my dissertation topics, now I have started. I think it has been 1.5 hours in my dissertation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dimal. Okay, I've now still one point to cover, which is specific suggestions on creating course material and other things in far distance education. So I've listed some points. First point I've here, you'll find it also in the handout, it's syllabus and textbooks. I don't like to say too much about it because what needs to be said you can read in the handout, and I don't think it needs to be addressed specially. If you have special questions, you can later ask when we have discussion and question time. One thing I think is important, an important point is exam. What kind of exam files do you create for your courses, and what should they include? So what we have, I can only tell you what we have done. Our exam files mainly consisted of 3 parts. One is a kind of multiple choice question part, let's say 30 questions for each course, and the student has to answer all these questions, and that these 30, for example, 30 multiple choice questions were addressing the reproduction of that what the student learned. So the student has to reproduce what he has learned. So that's the aim of this part of the exam, is to test and to see whether A, the student has read the material assigned, and B, whether he has understood it. So then next part of the exam is essay type of questions. So the student has to choose, is given, for example, 5 topics, and he can choose 3 from those 5 topics, and he has to write an essay on these topics, not longer than 2 pages for each topic. And this part of the exam, essay writing, is important for the student to develop his reflection, to develop his critical thinking and analysis, which is very important in academics. So The third part is sometimes we have it in these courses in linguistics. For example, we have so-called practical project assignment. That means the student is given a task, describe the phonological system of your native language, for example, Dima, something like that. So, so I think all the 3 points need essentially to be covered in a written exam, especially in far distance studies, because the exam will address all the kind of things that normally are asked in any oral exam in any traditional educational program. But because of the distance, you have to cover these 3 points, so to get a balance. Now then, I have some final points. The principle of all kinds of anything that educational institutions do, there is a nice principle, and in some ways it's also an ethical and a moral principle that help the educational institution exists to help students succeed. In other words, student success also is my success as a teacher, or open university's success. Point. Now, it is also some practical suggestion. It is suggested that what we do is we have regular consultation hours for our students. For example, some students don't understand what is written in the textbook or have a question, they need to contact a teacher. They can do that by email. They can go to the web and chat, have a discussion with the teacher via Skype, for example, another possibility. But you have to set times for that. That means you have to set regular consultation hours, because sometimes the student thinks he can call you anytime, even let's say at 12 o'clock in the night when you sleep. And I won't tolerate such a thing. So I give the student a certain time, say on twice a week, from 14 to 16 hours, 2 hours consultation time. You can send me your email, or you can call me, or you can call me on Skype or whatever. Then another point I would suggest is that, if possible, Open University should assign a personal mentor to each student. I say, if possible. I mean, the mentor is the kind of person the students mainly will have contact with. So the students can ask the mentor about anything concerning his studies, and also exam regulations, other regulations set by Open University. We have a similar system. So, and it worked well for us in the past. Well, we've done our programs. We've done for 14 years, and well, due to reasons of my age, 2 years ago, I became 65. And I said, okay, I want to get out of business because I'm going to retire now. So what I did with our schools, we had 8 schools all over the world in different countries, and I said to my partners, I told them, okay, I'll get out of business, I will retire, I just don't want to work any longer, I don't want to work so much anymore. I'll just retire and continue to write and publish my books in Germany, but that's all. And you can continue. They are much younger than I am, so they have their own schools now, and their schools developed from our school, which was at least was one kind of school network, and now they're continuing the schools, the different schools we have in their own country independently, and well. And I've done this. I've done this myself for 40 years, and well, I think it's enough. And now it's also enough that I've spoken, and it's now opening time for any question, discussion, whatever you would like to say. Please say. Finish with my lecture.
thank you, Professor Smith, for your wonderful presentation, and I guess you did full justice to the topic of your presentation. And it is about not just distance learning, it is hard distance learning. Perhaps Munich to Nepal, Germany to Nepal.
Yeah.
It's a far distance learning. So, as a teacher, what I knew, I supervised so many PhD studies and participated more than 500 PhD viva sessions in University. A huge number. But one thing he told us through Mr. Dhimalu is that true mentoring is a very important thing. There is much contribution, much sacrifice on the part of the mentor, the professor. That is a very important thing we came to know. And thank you very much. And I would like to request all of you, you can make your observations, queries, or discussion. Please begin with your very brief introduction, name and your institutions. Thank you very much. Let's, yes, it is too late now. Let's introduce ourselves. Even if it is too late, I am Ramchandra Paudel, professor by profession, but I have changed my comfort zone. I'm here as a planner and a policy maker in Open University. So please.
I'm Sujan Maratha. I'm actually a specialist.
I'm sorry, I have to tell you something. I cannot hear so well. I have problems on my left here, so please speak loudly.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm Sujan Maratha. I'm associate professor in public health.
Yeah.
Bodhraj Nirola. I am working in National Center for Education Development. It belongs to the Ministry of Education. And in the meantime, there is also a distance learning center in our office.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Namaskar all of you. I'm Balram Chapare, associated with Faculty of Management, Trivandrum University.
Yeah.
Namaskar, I am Dilbasar Takal, Faculty of Mathematics Education, Trivandrum University.
Okay.
Namaskar, I am Padmaraj Bhatta, working in Nepal University.
Namaskar to all of you. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Sajid Kumar Shrestha. I am in the teaching field from 13 years. I am a faculty of management, Trivandrum University, Sandarpur campus. I work as a faculty lecturer.
Namaskar, I am Dr. Ruma Manandar. I teach in Manandar campus.
Namaskar, I am Kumar Lagal, Master, Nepal University.
Namaskar, I am Kishore Agrawal, Faculty of Management, Trivandrum University, of multiple campus.
Namaskar, I am Gautam Mahajan, Faculty of Management, Trivandrum campus,
I'm Nitin Pathak. I'm faculty in Trivandrum University. I'm a linguist, more of a psycholinguist.
Oh, colleagues, good.
And prior to that, I was in education. Right now, I'm doing my PhD in cognitive science.
Yeah.
So it's from linguistics, language, ELT, education to cognitive science and all that.
Good.
Namaste, Rajan Paudel from Trivandrum University, Faculty of Management. Somehow I have been associated with this Open University also in the formulations of curriculum and all that. Thank you.
Namaste, I'm Sinu Manandar Bajracharya and Dean of the Management and the Law Faculty in Nepal University.
Namaste, this is Vivek Gundari, Head of ICT Department, Sanskrit Campus.
Good day, Giras Bhatta. I am associated with this Open University.
Namaste, Jaikraj Sharma, Vice Chancellor, Nepal.
Namaste, Guru Mainali, Ministry of Education, ICT section, Under Secretary.
Yeah.
Namaste, myself Sombahadur Dhimalu from Murang. I'm his students. this skill. Thank you.
Now I would like to request you, turn by turn, you raise your hand. We can have a lively discussion.
Yeah.
Learner-centered,
Yeah.
participant-centered approach.
Now question answer session. By sitting you can.
No, I'll stand.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, please.
हुन्छ उभिएरै गर्नुहुन्छ अरे
Some of the
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was interesting. I am particularly interested when you touched on learning, memory, and all that, because that's primarily my area of interest and my current area where I'm working. Recently, and especially in the 21st century, in the last 1.5 decades, there are a lot of research which are coming up from the fields of cognitive science and cognitive neuroscience and all this, especially in the area of memory, you said, more in the area of working memory, and how you enhance working memory to perform a particular task and all that. And this associative learning is very crucial, like the neurons that fire together, wire together and all this. And how do you think the insights from all these brain studies, neuronal studies, can enhance, or can they be incorporated in this open and distance learning? Is there a way? Is there a...
Yes, that can be provided under certain conditions, right? I'll give you, I don't want to be too abstract at the moment, so I'd better use an example. I'll use an example from Chinese. You know, you probably will know that the Chinese language has thousands of Chinese characters, right? Chinese script. So, and each character actually is something like a word. So that means if you know 3,000 words in the Chinese language, you have to know 3,000 characters. But how can you remember a Chinese person? How can a Chinese person remember all these 3,000 characters? Yeah, there is a simple answer. Because of the Chinese writing system, it's different from any Latin or even Devanagari alphabet. Because Devanagari alphabet, or the Western system, you have written symbols, and each written symbol represents a sound. So Devanagari letters represent the sound, correct or not correct?
Yeah.
Well, the Chinese character does not represent the sound. Chinese characters represent meaning. For example, you have this character. It means ren. It means person. Human being. You can see this is the body, and these are the two legs. This. Two legs. So actually, for each word, they write something like drawing a picture, right?
iconic.
Yeah. So like drawing a picture. So that means the Chinese system works like that. That with any character or any written symbol they have, they associate a meaning, and the meaning that is associated with such a character is the associative principle, or the associative element that helps them store all this information in their long-term memory. That's the way it is. That's what I can say as a linguist. Or, for example, there are some words, or some meanings of words, that you cannot paint. For example, how do you, what kind of picture do you want to draw if you talk about responsibility or concepts like that? So you can only give symbolic meanings. For example, the Chinese, for example, you have the word gossip. And And the Chinese write 3 times the symbol for woman. This is the character, the Chinese character for woman. Woman. It's pronounced yu. Yu. Here, they have the combination of this yu 3 times in a single character, and that means gossip. It's pronounced jian, which means gossip. Now, the idea behind this is there are 3 women in the village standing together and chatting about their neighbor. Do you know the neighbor has a new cat, and that neighbor came home drunk last night. Things like that. That's the idea behind that. 3 women standing together is gossip. It's perhaps a bit discriminatory against women, but that's basically how the Chinese system works. Right? Well, did I answer your question with that? I hope I answered your question.
To some extent. But then, I think here the visual element, associating the visual element with the semantics and making that kind of connection.
But especially in this case of the script system, because of the principle of the Chinese script, the visual element serves as the connecting thread to connect new information that you learn with old information already stored in your long-term memory. So only if you have this connection between old information stored in your long-term memory with the new information coming in from the outside into the long-term memory, then you will learn it successfully. That's the basic idea behind it. And during this process, this kind of visual element can serve as a connecting thread.
Yeah, because now, earlier the understanding was the brain was a modular system. I mean, it was Jerry Fodor's theory of modularity that says it is all segregated. But now the approach is all integrated. It's more of interactionist model, which says our brain fuses all different information together and then makes sense of it. I think that makes a good sense.
Well, the fact is, I mean, I was talking about the synapses and the nerve cells. So, of course, the synapses and the nerve cells are, the way they are structured in each person are different from person to person, and they are unique for each individual person. So that's why, for example, you as an individual person are different from your brother or anyone else in your family. Right? So that means it's not only the cognitive element, let's say your intellectual part, that is influenced by the structure of these synapses or this network of synapses. It's also your let's say your mentality, your whole personality. For example, all the emotional parts of your personality, either you're, let's say, someone who's funny and likes to tell jokes, or you are a person that is more, let's say, an introvert type of person, not talking too much to other people, especially when you don't know the other people, things like that. So all that makes up your personality. It's not only the intellectual part, it's also, let's say, your everything what you are, emotionally and intellectually.
Synapses are formed with every learning. Every learning is basically a formation of a new synapse.
And the way that the network of synapses are built up during childhood into adulthood, that actually forms the way a person will be like in later life.
Yeah, good news is the theory of neuroplasticity says that you can learn anytime. I mean, earlier it was believed that when you mature, your brain matures and you cannot learn anymore. But now, I mean, the neuroplasticity says that it's not like that. The brain is still flexible. And it is receptive to information and can still create new synapses.
But that's also, let's say, the way your synapses are structured are
the functional connectivity.
Of course, are partly determined by the environment in which you grew up. So it's not only something that you inherit from your parents, let's say biologically. It's also the environment that forms you, and that has an impact on building up this network of synapses.
So please. Okay, I have two questions. One related to the, say, supervision, as you said. One-to-one mentoring is very useful in distance learning mode. But when we imagine thousands of students, maybe from the whole country, who are out of the universities, colleges and all that, how would it be possible to, say, have this kind of one-to-one mentoring, one? And also, next, because you have been involved in this process for long, and this concept is new for us, could you share some pitfalls that we should avoid during the curriculum development or something like that in open university system?
Well, I think I've talked about the difference. To understand you correctly, you're talking about adult education.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you have to, of course, you have the two fields. One is university level, and the other is not university level. So most of what happens in adult education is not university level. So that's, let's say, continuing education for, let's say, if you're a hotel manager, you do some special course. New methods of management for hotels and something like that. And there, in that case, you don't give lectures. You do so-called case studies. For example, you can play a kind of role game. So a role game, for example, you're at the reception and another course participant plays the guest. You play the role. So then, what do you do at the reception? What kind of questions do you ask to fill in the form at the hotel, and about payment and all kinds of other things that, for example, are included with receiving guests at the hotel. You can play that. You don't have to give a lot of theory. You just play that and act that. And imitate, let's say, try to imitate a realistic situation, like it could also occur in practical daily life. That's one of the ways that constructivism that I talked about at the beginning also is in favor of. Do things like that. So you could work with this. You could work with a lot of these things, let's say, in non-formal adult education that is not university level. This constructive approach, I think, is absolutely fine. But you could not do it for university level education. So that's the basic thing. That means everything that is associated with taking for students or the course participants taking an exam at the end of the course. You will have to follow the more traditional way of giving lectures, textbook study, and so on. And you could do it with let's say kind of interactive things, elements, role play, things like that. You could do in, let's say, less or non-formal educational programs at below university level. That would be my answer. Anyone wants to ask anything else?
Professor Schmidt, I have one observation to share here. It's not a question. My impression about the word term pedagogy and andragogy. The word pedagogy denotes to kind of activity, teaching any person of any age. But in the beginning, theories were developed on the basis of the children, how children were taught. You know, these age-wise philosophies, methodologies were sometimes grossly applied to people of other ages, maybe old age, maybe 30s, maybe 40s. So the term andragogy is not so very popular in currency, in academia.
Yeah.
So only the word pedagogy is there. If you are teaching PhD graduate, you are using the term pedagogy, and the underlying thing is that the philosophies, the principles that were developed on the basis of children's teaching were closely applied to teaching the adults like these people. So what's your kind of observation on this?
Well, if you ask me personally, I'll also give you a personal answer. Now, I believe, first of all, I believe that in the history of pedagogy, philosophy or philosophical concept in that area have done a lot of harm. So I'm very much, personally, I'm very much against philosophy in pedagogy. Instead, I would try to build up my pedagogy on the basis of social and historical facts. That means empirical studies, nothing else. Philosophy, but philosophy in this case is just ideology. Ideology, for example, if you can, someone defends capitalism, it's also an ideology. Yeah, defend capitalism. If I or liberal approach to economy, that's ideology. We don't need such things in education. We should. My approach is to base all kinds of concepts, on which you also may call philosophy, on empirical studies only. And if you take these empirical studies from data that you want from empirical studies. That's all.
Okay.
That's
any other remarks?
अघि सरको भनेको अलिक त्यति सुन्नु भयो जस्तो लाग्यो अलिक ठुलो आवाजले
Any other queries? Feel free to share.
ठुलो आवाजले भन्नुहोस्
Sir, our query is about the textbook, types of textbook that we follow in distance learning. The books available in the market, the books available from the university, for example, the books you prefer him is in Nepal, the books available in the Germany is not available in Nepal, but you say through the PDF and so on, then how could this be linked the type of textbook in distance learning?
Now, of course, the textbook we are using in Parkinson studies are in the file format of PDF.
The way
e-books.
The books is based on what you prescribe. You make the book and send to the student, or the book is available in the market.
Well, I think your problem would only be how to find such textbooks, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah, and they are available at certain places in the internet. And if you have, let's say, if you have a stable internet connection, you just can download them. Well, obviously you have to know where to find this textbook. That means you have to know the URL where you can find the textbook, then you just download and that's it. Now, the thing is, there are so many subjects. I only know about textbooks for linguistics and for English and so what my area of expertise is. I don't know how you can find, let's say, sources for law or for social science or whatever, because it is not my area of expertise. I just know about my area, my own area of expertise, where to find such textbooks. And well, for other, certainly I'm sure there are thousands of textbooks available in the internet on chemistry, on mathematics, on anything you could think of. You just have to know, and if you don't know, use Google. Use Google and let's say use a keyword for the search string like chemistry textbooks or anything you're looking for, something like that. And then there will be something listed and just try your luck. And if you can't find any, then go to the bookshop, get one. And, I know, I'm a foreigner, but I know I've been to 3 bookshops here in Kathmandu and got some books here. I know where the bookshops are, otherwise I don't know Kathmandu, but I don't know where these bookshops are. He's taken me to 2 of them. And well, then you could eventually, scan the textbook.
Yeah. I'm
believe most of the evaluations are done from distance.
Yeah.
And then if someone dodge for someone else, if you are sending questions to your students, for example, and then someone else does for your student and sends the assignment to you, how can you control these possible chances of deviations?
Oh.
Another
Good question. Yeah, good question. You know, first of all, I can tell you the student must not think his professor is stupid. Because that would be the biggest mistake. If a student tries to cheat me, and you know, and I find out, I prove, not just the vague idea that he could try to cheat me, but I will prove that he's cheating. I'll fail him without mercy. I'll fail him, because that's the thing I won't tolerate. So I can tell you, I've had.
What are the control mechanisms?
I'll come to that point, but I'll give you an example. I've been in that kind of crisis business for 14 years. And we have, at our school network, we have, let's say, in that time about 1,400 students, something like that, graduating. And, let's say, nearly all our students, that means 99.99 something percent, were successful and graduated successfully. I had one student from Nigeria whom I had to fail. I was a student in the English teacher training program, and he was supposed to write his master thesis. And he was stupid enough to send me a master thesis he had copied from someone else. Typical plagiarism. Now, what do you think I did with the student? I failed him. But that was one case of, say, 1,799 students. The question is, how can the professor control it? Now, I tell you one thing: it's not my bloody job to control, because I'm not in the kindergarten. Right? It's not my job to control. If by chance I find out that there's something wrong, that the student tries to cheat, then I'll go after it. But my job as a professor is, first of all, to trust my student until to the proof of the contrary. And it's not my bloody job to play the police and control them.
Yeah.
You cannot do that.
I don't trust.
It's technically and practically impossible. You have to trust your student. If there are some signs that the student is trying to cheat you or to cheat in the exam, then you go after it. You do some more research. You talk to the student and make up your own mind. But, you know, the professor is not a policeman. That's my answer.
Any other? Sir? Any other question? Sir?
If not, but I have one query.
Yeah.
I have one experience that we have managed our online system, Moodle as the learning management system. And then the teacher, the professor, they put several books, several articles, videos, everything, very messy things were there.
And you have done all of that?
Yeah, all those things, they are related, quite related to the topics the students have to learn.
Yeah.
But there are so many things. And there is nothing else how that student has to proceed. Which are the major reading texts and what type of activity?
Yeah, the thing
So how
is,
do you suggest while designing this learning management system and to facilitate the students as a professor?
Yeah, first of all, if you put anything on the web, it must be clearly, I think, must be clearly stated what kind of course and for which semester, for example, this material is. Then you make a note about the material. What kind of material is it? So, for example, if it is a PDF file, the student must know it's a PDF file so that he has got the software to open and read the PDF, for example. So the requirements, software requirements for this. Then, for example, if the student has to download something, I know downloading in Nepal because of the slow internet can be a problem. I know that one. So you have to give the size of the file. So these are all this kind of important information, and you should also tell the student how to get hold of this material in case he cannot download it. Then it has to go to the center of Open University, and they can print it out when he pays some rupees for each page, print it out, something like that.
And another question: do you use semester system or annual system? If we use modular curriculum, how can we use semester, or how can we make an annual system? How do you do it?
Sorry, I did not acoustically. I did not understand.
Semester and annual, there are two systems. Semester, do you know about the semester system?
You're talking about exams.
Exams, yeah. How can we do that?
What?
Because if we can give some modular form of curriculum, maybe for this bachelor level there will be 20 modules.
Yeah.
If you complete this 20 modules, then you will get 120 credits and you will graduate.
Yeah.
But the problem will be there how to take that exam.
What we have, I can only tell you what we have done. We have given exams for each course. In the syllabus file we have stated clearly, okay, if you pass the exam, the module exam of this course, you can get at most, let's say, at bachelor level, between 3 and 4 credit points. Okay? And so we've never done any annual exams or any semester exams. We have always done exams by course. That is the most successful. Because students still have in their brain what they have studied before. How was it in your case at Open University of India? How was it in your case?
Yes, two difference I found. In case of, I did my MA education from UP. There is one system, assignment carries 30%, but term and exam carries 70% there. But here, with my professor, he gave me course system.
Yeah, so it's course-based exams.
Then check it. Finish this course, then check it. This may take 10 years too. If the student is lazy, it may take certain time too. If the student is very active, yes, depend on the student. Yeah.
I would, for the moment, I would like to take a break for 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'll come back, but please, I have now spoken so long time, and I just need to...
You look very handsome in this sartorical sense. You look like our one young Kendra Divista. Something like that.
Yeah,
Very handsome.
I will come back in 3 minutes. Well, I've got one habit, and that is smoking. I'll do that other way.
टुल्स चाहिँ प्रयोग गर्न चाहिँ सिकाउने रहेछन् कि उहाँहरूले चाहिँ टुल्सहरू अब यो जस्तै अब मलाई ग्रामर पुरै ग्रामर बनाउनु हो कि अब म व्याकरण बनाउने त होइन अब पढ्न त म अर्को पढाइहाल्नु तर मलाई त्यस्तो ढिङ्गाको व्याकरण पुरै टुलमा गराउने
यो एउटा कोर्समा कन्ट्याक्ट फिजिकल फिजिकली कन्ट्याक्ट हुने आवरहरू
हुन्छ उहाँले तपाईँले तर उहाँहरू के हुन्छ एकदम गाह्रो क्या मान्छे उसले दिएको टाइममा भेट्नुभयो भने भेट्नुभयो नभए फेरि तपाईँ अर्को दिन भन्नुभयो भने अभाइलेबल गाह्रो हुन्छ